Welcome to Timeless Tales, History, and Folklore. I'm Dayanara, your host. If you're intrigued by tales, history, and folklore, whether imaginary or real, subscribe and press the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time I upload a new video. Today, I'll be talking about Lilith, Adam's first wife according to Judaic folklore. Lilith's appearance was created to reconcile the two contradictory creation narratives in the book of Genesis, leading to the concept of the first Eve. The first version, called the priestly version, appears in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, where God creates man and woman simultaneously. So God created mankind in the divine image, male and female. God created them. In this version, Lilith is referred to as First Eve. Man and woman are portrayed as equals and are both the pinnacle of God's creation. This version of creation is described as an androgyny, a creature that was both male and female, found in Genesis Rabbah, chapter 8, verse 1, and Leviticus Rabbah, chapter 14, verse 1. This creature is split into a man and a woman. According to the alphabet of Ben Sira, Lilith was Adam's first wife, but the couple fought all the time. They didn't see eye to eye on matters of intimacy because Adam always wanted to dominate and wouldn't allow Eve equal courtesy. In their disagreement, Lilith leaves Adam and flees from the Garden of Eden. Adam tells God that Lilith left, so God sends 3 angels to retrieve her: Sinoi, Sansinoi, and Semengoloth. They found Lilith in a cave bearing children. They asked her to return to the garden, but she refused. The angels told her that they would kill 100 of her children every day for her disobedience. In revenge, she is said to rob children for the deaths of stillborn infants. Male children are at a risk of Lilith's wrath for 8 days until circumcision, and girls are at risk for 20 days. Here we see an advantage of being male over female. As being born male, they bear less risk. With this, Lilith does agree not to kill the babies who had amulets of either of the 3 angels. In another account, Lilith is said to return to the garden after the angels' departure, but upon her arrival, she discovers that Adam already has another mate, Eve. Out of yet another moment of revenge, Lilith mounts Adam while he's sleeping and stole his seed. With his seed, she bears Lilium, earth-bound demons, to replace her children killed by the angels. Adam being displeased with Lilith's refusal to return, God had replaced her with a second Eve that met his needs. In the Yahwistic second and most popular version, God creates Adam, placing him in the Garden of Eden. I've left a link on my video of Adam and Eve in the cards. Soon thereafter, God decides to give Adam a companion. He then creates all the animals, realizing none are suitable helpers as Adam rejects them all. God then causes Adam to go into a deep sleep, then fashions Eve from his rib. When Adam awakens, he recognizes that Eve is part of him and accepts her as his companion. In this account, man is created first and woman is created last. The obvious contradictions presented a problem for the ancient rabbis, who believed that the Torah was the written word of God, and therefore it could not contradict itself. They therefore interpreted Genesis 1 so that it did not contradict Genesis 2, coming up with ideas such as the androgyny and first Eve in the process. According to the theory of first Eve in Genesis 1, she is referred to as Adam's first wife, while in Genesis 2, Eve is referred to as Adam's second wife. Eventually, this idea of first Eve was combined with legends of Mesopotamian female Lilu demons who were believed to stalk men in their sleep and prey upon women and children. However, the only explicit reference to a Lilith in the Bible appears in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 14, which reads, "The wildcat shall meet with the jackals, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, yea, Lilith shall repose there and find her a place of rest." Over the centuries, she became known as a succubus demon who copulated with men during their sleep and strangled newborn babies. The name Lilith translates to night monster. Scholars are uncertain of where Lilith originates from, but many believe she was inspired by Sumerian myths about female vampires or Mesopotamian myths about succubi called Lilin. Lilith is mentioned 4 times in the Babylonian Talmud, though in each of these cases she is not referred to as Adam's wife. Nida 24b discusses her in relation to abnormal fetuses and uncleanliness, saying, "If an abortion had the likeness of Lilith, its mother is unclean by reason of the birth, for it is a child, but it has wings." Here we learn that the rabbis believed Lilith had wings and that she could influence the outcome of a pregnancy. Shabbat 151b also discusses Lilith, warning that man should not sleep alone in a house, lest Lilith fall upon him in his sleep. The rabbis believed she was responsible for nocturnal emissions while a man was sleeping, and that Lilith used the semen she collected to give birth to hundreds of demon babies. Lilith also appears in Baba Batra 73a through b, where a sighting of her son is described, and in the Erubin 100b, where the rabbis discuss Lilith's long hair in relation to Eve. Glimpses of Lilith's eventual association with first Eve can be seen in Genesis Rabbah, chapter 18, verse 4, a collection of Midrashim about the book of Genesis. Here, the rabbis describe the first Eve as a golden bell that troubles them in the night. Over the centuries, the association between first Eve and Lilith led to Lilith's assuming the role of Adam's first wife in Jewish folklore. Once again, similar to the biblical tale of Adam and Eve, we see Lilith being depicted as disobedient and defiant, but they go even further in saying that Lilith is a female demon who is a murderer of newborn babies while sexually stealing the seeds of men she sleeps with. It would appear that the patriarchy that exists in all Abrahamic religions has and continues to propagate male superiority, depicting women as emotionally, mentally unstable, physically inferior, unclean, and unworthy. Most religions advocate for the domination of females by males being beneficial for both men and women. Restrictions exist over a woman's choices when it concerns her body, sexuality, and reproductive rights. Sexual exclusivity is advocated for women, while men are exonerated from the same obligation. Here we see the obvious double standard and hypocrisy. These things are said to be done for the protection of women. Women are said to lack rationale, self-restraint, and should not be allowed to have the same rights as men. Ironically, most, if not all, of these religions weren't discriminatory to begin with. Many scholars believe that early religions were matriarchal in nature and centered on the goddess or goddesses. We can see evidence of this from feminine-themed iconography that exists in ancient civilizations. Let us examine Lilith for a moment. The priestly version of man creation shows us that man and woman were both created at the same time, deeming them to be equal. Jewish folklore tells us that first Eve was Lilith. Adam refused to accept Lilith as his equal, therefore she flew away from Adam and the Garden of Eden. Lilith, wanting to retain her dignity and independence, chose a life of loneliness over being subservient to Adam. Because of this, Jewish legend chooses to portray Lilith as an evil demon who covets the seeds of men while also murdering newborns. The alphabet of Ben Sira's account explains Lilith's escape and struggle for equality. As God commands 3 angels to forcibly return her to Adam, she refuses and is punished. This later version of Lilith was a progression of the original story and overshadows the previous independent Lilith. Now we find that she's a demon and/or an evil witch. Here is one of many ways religion influences and manipulates men's feelings about the nature of women. Now, is Lilith a myth, a fictitious character without any historical basis? If so, why invent her? She does appear to understand that she is Adam's equal, telling us that she has a high level of consciousness. She recognized tyranny for what it is and valued herself enough to take a stand. She showed determination and courage in doing this. She shows strength of character and self-commitment. She forsakes the security and companionship of the garden for her personal freedom and independence, accepting loneliness and her chosen fate. She takes responsibility for her life, drawing from her own strength. She refused to participate in her own victimization. Aspects of the characterization of her being a vengeful, murderous demon cannot be accepted because they do not flow out of a commitment to self, but is a reaction to an outside event, Adam's refusal to accept her as his equal. Had Adam accepted her as his equal, these negative traits would never exist. Her fight for equality is tainted with male bias, fear, and a need for control. Lilith is a powerful female. She has spiritual power and knowledge. Remember that biblical history, all of history, is written by men. That's why it's called his story. Because of this, we understand that anything that women create or invent is either diminished or destroyed. Consider the possibility that the story of Lilith's revolt may be one of women's creations that was told from mother to daughter for generations before surfacing in the alphabet, then was contaminated by male bias. Now, let's for a moment examine the concept of Lilith being found in a cave bearing children. How is she doing this? She no longer being with Adam alone and without a mate. In this account, after her refusal to return to the garden, she is said to steal Adam's seed in order to bear the lilium. So whose children was she bearing in the cave when the angels first found her? Whoever created this account didn't consider the implications of what this means. Is it possible that Lilith or women have the ability to bear children without the presence of a man's seed? Although inadvertent, is there an admission to this possibility in the tale of Lilith? That perhaps parthenogenesis was the process by which Lilith was able to bear children. Now, what is parthenogenesis? It's a natural process of asexual reproduction in which growth and development of embryos occur without the fertilization of sperm. Does this explain how Lilith was able to bear children while being alone in the cave? If this is the case, then it would stand to reason that women have a natural ability to create other humans without the presence of a male, and yet women have been told for centuries they are inferior and unequal. Perhaps women are unequal, but not because of what we've been led to believe, but because they're superior in having an ability that men never will. The gift of creation. Let's examine the circumstances. Adam and Lilith are the only living human beings on earth. She lives in solitude and is bearing children, and yet in the second version of creation, we are told that Eve comes from Adam's rib. That man was created first and woman last, who came from him. Paradoxically, none of this makes sense, because if woman is able to produce offspring without man, how are we to believe the account that Eve came from Adam? Let us all consider that we haven't been given an accurate account of this story, understanding that many of these historical tales are stories used for the purpose of conveying a moral or hidden meaning. Biblical allegories often explore the struggle between good and evil, but have the ability to condition your thinking in viewing the world in a very specific way. There is evidence that from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic eras, that women and goddesses were venerated. Women were seen as the center of their communities because females were the creators. Women were cultivators. All life came from her. So how are we to believe in the narrative that men in Abrahamic cultures continue to propagate? When looking at both creation narratives, we see inaccuracies in how these stories were told that cannot be ignored. There are too many clues and hidden meanings that give us more information. Are women equal to men in the eyes of God? Were women created first? Have we been misled and conditioned to believe for 3,000 years that women are beneath men, when evidence in these stories are telling us otherwise? We see a clear pattern of distorting the truth for the purpose of shifting the odds in favor of one group of people over another, in this case, men over women, in order to secure the continuation of patriarchal ideologies in modern society. The Lilith story may point to our own history reflecting assertive and rebellious behavior from the past. A woman who would not be dominated. A woman who demanded equality in full awareness of who she was. There's so much that one can learn from the past if you take the time to question what you were told to believe in or accept. Don't be afraid to awaken. Don't be afraid to question the things that you once thought were true. The most beautiful thing in the world is the conjunction of learning, inspiration, research, and the joy of discovery. What are your opinions on Lilith and how she's portrayed in Judaic folklore? Why do women always seem to be depicted as bad, evil, or unclean? Your comments and thoughts are appreciated. If you liked this video and found it interesting, please give it a thumbs up and thank you for watching.